and muting. And with that, let's stand up. And so walk around a little bit to sort of throw off your seat. So I'm just going to show from the waist down here. We talk about hips, and sometimes I have learned too that there's a little bit of confusion. What is actually what? Your hips is where your thigh bone, the femur, sits into the socket. And you got a bony bump on the outside. That's a greater trochanter. And that is where the arm, your leg arm, this is, you feel that part. You don't feel the socket itself. And the hips have amazing mobility. You can turn a leg out and in, pivoting on the foot. You can pivot on the other foot too. Notice the pivoting part. Can you do that without your pelvis moving? So the pelvic bowl, the ilium, literally means bowl, is a joint separate from your thigh bones, but oftentimes they kind of fuse together. And then they begin to move at one, which means that we take the wear and tear to the joints that are right below or right above. So that would be the knees or your lumbar spine. There's a reason why these discs are really fraught of slipping and doing all kinds of naughty things. Lifting your hip, your heel up one at a time, keep the legs straight. So navigating this waist language. Can we contract up here? This is your walking. Your hip, we just did those, that joint. So your pelvis has 3 joints to be specific. Take one hand and place it with the middle finger right above the crack. That's the sacrum, and this is the one where we get in trouble a lot, especially women, because our pelvis sits differently and it can easily get out of whack, especially if there are childbirth involved. This joint can get really, really tired and sitting in the wrong place. The nutation, so this joint is not supposed to move a lot, but if you bend one knee and take your hip back, this is your walking action. You can feel how there's a little bit of movement in this. One hip bowl moves forward, the other move back. Where we also have a little bit of movement is at the pubic bone. That's another joint. And that joint, if there's a lot of imbalance in your sacral joint, then the pubic symphysium joint can get arthritis and slip out of place. And that is really, 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 really painful. So we want to keep the hip joints working well. We want to keep the stability around the whole pelvis so that we don't begin to layer in arthritis unnecessarily or slippage of the sacral joint. So, last thing, notice, and this is really good to do in front of a mirror. Take your fingers, your thumbs to your lower ribs, and then middle finger or index finger to the top rim of your pelvis. And in front of a mirror, you can gauge is the same distance between these two. So it's a little hard to see, it's just kind of looking down at yourself. And that could indicate maybe different leg lengths or scoliosis of the spine, which is going to be felt acutely in the hips and the sacrum as well. So with that little piece of information, we're going to come on to our back. And Roberta, I have created the sequence for you, so it should all feel good. How are you feeling? Is it a thumbs up? Good. And so as for everybody, don't do anything that doesn't feel right. Always back off, back off, back off. Move in a place, in a plane that is comfortable for your body. Educating the body to move with ease, not strain or tension. So let your legs stretch out long. And this assessment, both the standing and the supine, are really, really important. Martha Peterson, your teacher via extension that I'm studying with right now, was asked this question in our session this week by a student, says, do we need to keep doing that? She says, yes. How are you going to know how your body feels if you don't spend time feeling how you feel? So that's kind of where we get our map, our menu. Are you listening to one side? Notice the bony bumps on your body, heels, shoulder blades. Notice your buttocks. Is there any chattiness, any part of your body that you need to be a little tender with tonight? Because habitually we can get a little too eager sometimes in our movements. Remember, back off, and then back off. Let's slide the legs up for the constructive rest position. And that puts the psoas into a slack right off the bat, so it's not pulling on the lumbar spine. Take a moment and sense your breath. The in-breath, the out-breath. Quality of the breath, of course, relates directly to our nervous system. So notice, is it short? Does it feel tight? Tight breath could indicate pain and discomfort. Invite the breath to deepen into the belly. And we have the hands on the lower abdomen, but the breath expands evenly all the way around. Well, it kind of moves the organs a little bit out to the side. But can you feel the breath into your sacral area? Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and out. The pelvic floor is the bottom of the basket, and the tension across the pelvic floor relates directly to the hips. Too tight, we lack mobility. Too loose, we have too much mobility. So as with anything else in the body, we want it just right. The in-breath softens. There's a sense of, there's a little bit more give space between the sits bones. And as you exhale, can you contract? Draw the sits bones towards one another, and you feel the pelvic floor contracting and drawing upward. And then let that go as you inhale. Kind of sort of like a Kegel, but a little different in where you were initiating it. Contracting, drawing the sits bones towards one another. And then release on the in-breath. So Mula Bandha, the root lock in yoga, initiate it here. So it's not the sphincter muscle, though it wants to help out a little bit. It is also not the urethra, though it wants to help out too. It's kind of in between. Contract, and then slowly release. So a pendiculation of the pelvic floor, which can help both strengthen what is too weak, but it can also help release what is too tight. Muscles here are the same. If you notice sort of jittery or jumpiness on the release, there may be some holding in the pelvic floor. And that we do here, what we do every other place in our body, we gently begin to apply, but with kindness and compassion. And then we're going to smooth out the jumpy jitteriness. So don't go in with force. A little goes a long way. And now notice we can begin to invite the contraction of the pelvic floor up to the lower abdomen, into the flattening of the low back. Uddiyana Bandha in yoga. And then as you inhale, let's release to neutral. Let's do that one more time. Exhale, contract the pelvic floor. Sits bones draw towards one another, though they are not really moving anywhere, but it gets the muscles on board, and then we hollow out the lower belly. And then we let go. One more time. Exhaling, contracting. Is it easier to contract one side than the other? Notice this. If you've suffered a hip injury, a trauma to the pelvis, the hips, that has brought imbalance, you may notice that the muscles are just a little off-key firing. Now, wait for the next in-breath, and we're going to arch here. Invite expansion across the pelvis. Let's float that one to neutral. Take a breath in for nothing. And then we flatten with the pelvic floor contracting as much or as little as is comfortable for you. And slowly release to neutral. Take a buffer breath here. In and out. And let's do it one more time. Inhale, arch. Low back expands. Exhale, floating to neutral. So we want to make sure we have completed one movement before we initiate the next. Breath in for nothing. And exhale, Mula Bandha, pelvic floor and lower abdomen, Uddiyana Bandha. While we can contract Mula Bandha on both in and out breath, for Uddiyana, Mula Bandha on both in and out, Uddiyana has to be on the out breath. But we can't really breathe well. And then pause. Pausing as you come back to neutral. Notice the breath in the lower abdomen. Notice the duration of the breath. So some days you may not have a lot of time. Just doing this one here begins to get that cross pattern that I put in the email to release. I cannot overstate the importance of the arch and flatten. Now let's rock gently from side to side. Press the right hip down so you're rolling across the pelvis. Press the left down. Just easy. Gently. Gentle rock from side to side. Is one side easier? Now the knees are staying straight up, so notice if there's a lot of movement from side to side in the knees. This is still a waist movement, so the muscles above the hip rather than below. And then letting that go. That gets us ready for the pelvic clock. We haven't done that in a while. So starting centered on the sacrum. And then rolling. I always like to think of having a marble right in the center of my clock. And so 12 o'clock is towards my belly button, towards my chest. 6 o'clock towards my feet. And so I have 3 o'clock at my left hip and 9 o'clock at my right hip. So I'm going to roll my marble up to 12 o'clock. So that would be a flattening. And then roll the marble on the outer edge of the clock out to 3 o'clock. And I'm just going to go back again to 12. I'm just going to roll it between 12 and 3 o'clock. So now I'm combining these two movements with the arch and flatten up with the side movement. Can I negotiate this with ease? Your deep core muscles that connect spine to pelvis. The next time you go down to 3 o'clock, let's continue down to 6 o'clock. So now you're arching. And roll that back to 3. Between 3 and 6 o'clock. 3 and 6. And just notice, how does that feel? And then go from 6 to 3 all the way up to 12. Now you got the whole left side. If your clock is oriented like mine, then you might have chosen to switch it around. Can you roll this marble just evenly around along the outer rim? And then next time you come up to 12 o'clock, I'm going to pause and just straighten the legs out. Just notice left hip. Again, if you have the same orientation as me, right hip, of course you're going to notice them anyway, side to side. But what changed? You looking from the inside with the breath. Sensing the back, the pelvis, sacrum, hip, leg. We'll bend the knees up again. And then this time, let's live a little bit on the wild side. Let's roll the marble down to 6 o'clock. And then sweep it from 6 to 9. Notice how that feels compared to the other side. Gently sweeping it. And now let it go through 9 all the way up to 12. And then we do a little bit from 12 to 9. Is that an agreeable quadrant, or is that like a Salvador Dali clock? And slow it down. So inquire, being curious. And then when you're ready, begin to sweep your marble from 12 through 9, 6, so the whole outer right quadrant. How easy can you make this? Then next time you come up to 12, go all the way around. So for the record, I did not invent the name pelvic clock. That is the Thomas Hanna terminology. Go all the way around. What quadrant is a little jaggedy as opposed to which one is super easy? And then let's switch direction. And you may find this to be easier or harder. And then let's take the marble back to the center and slide the legs out. Pause. Feeling the breath in your trunk. Does it expand evenly, front, back, and sides? And we'll bend up the knees again. And then we'll work a little bit more on straight hip mobility. You're gonna toe heel your right leg off to the side. This is internal rotation. Pivot. You're gonna pivot on the heel, so lift the front of the foot up and then draw the knee down towards the midline. And just peek up. Make sure that you have great clearance for it. So the muscle we are interested in here is the glorious sartorius. Well, it's really just named the sartorius. I added glorious. It is the longest muscle in your body. It attaches at your outer hip and crosses from the outer hip to the inner knee. It's not a bulky event, just long and skinny. And it is part of your internal rotation friend. So now as you lower the knee down, notice, can you differentiate between your thigh bone, the femur, and the pelvis? So the pelvis is laying still. Only your right leg is moving up and down. What muscle releases? Can you sense this taking the leg down? And what muscle engages to bring your leg back up again? I always invite you to practice somatics with your eyes closed so that you can be really awake to your inner landscape. So pivoting on the heel, knee goes in towards the midline, in towards the midline. And then next time we come up, toe heel, all the way in. Well, let's straighten the legs out and feel again. What changed? Right side, left side. So when we work these very isolated muscle groups, when we have tension around the hip, we begin to put some tools in our tool bag of knowing, it is the glorious sartorius that's tight. And we have the knowledge how to release it. We'll bend the knees up and we'll toe heel, the left leg out. So about 90-degree bend in your knee. Lift the front of the foot. And again, let the knee pivot down towards the midline. Then coming up again. So your sacrum right now is your hip is coming, your pelvic landmark. So as the knee goes up and down, notice if you are changing how the sacrum is placed on your mat. Knee drops in towards the midline. Here's a fun fact. When we are born, our hip joints are pretty round. But as we blow out more and more birthday candles, our hip mobility begins to change. And we will begin to change the shape of the hip joint. And the more the shape changes, the more our mobility changes. So right now, you are helping reestablish healthy mobility. Does the left side feel like the right side? Is it the easy side? Or is it the side that seems like it belongs to somebody else? One more time. And then we'll take the whole foot down and toe heel, bringing it back in again. We'll slide the legs out and pause. A little mini vacation. And then we'll roll on over to the right side. And as you come onto the side, you're gonna bend the knees up, not for the side curl, but for the clamshell. So my heels are lining up with my sits bones, lining up with the back of my head. Take your hand to your outer hip, outer left hip that would be. The piriformis and gluteus medius are our friends here. External rotation and outer hip stability is their job. So as you lift your knee, we are contracting the muscle. And then as slowly as you can, lowering the knee back down. Notice if there are any jumps and jitters in this movement. When you're down, let's take a buffer breath. And lift again. Now pay attention to, you're feeling your greater trochanter on your left side, your bony hip bone. Keep that exactly where it is so that you are not rolling on the pelvis, that this is a pure hip movement. Can you feel your piriformis and gluteus medius firing up here? And then slowly, slowly, slowly releasing. As always, only do as much as is comfortable for your body. Let's take a buffer breath. In and out. And repeat. Lifting. And lowering down. Notice again the jumps and jitters. Letting go. Again. Because we don't do a lot of movement sideways unless we dance. The outer hip complex are often woefully underused. And so if you go to the doctor and say, my hips hurt, and you go to PT, you will probably get these for homework. Now, of course, here, our execution is a little bit different. It's an eccentric release, strengthening and lengthening simultaneously. It's a twofer. One more time. Staying right up on your right trochanter bump. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Releasing down. Say, yep, they sure turned on. Now keep your left leg bent, but straighten the right leg out. And again, staying right up on your hip. So not collapsing the spine, not moving the pelvis at all. You're going to lift the left leg up. And you can feel again, we are working now into the IT band. And then slowly lower that down. Now we sometimes do this with hip flexion, but I really like this variation too. So my leg is straight out along the mat. So not out in front, but straight down from heel to hip to head. So I'm taking up the whole mat. So just notice if you have the top leg out in front or is it down and long. Let's do it one more time. Again, pure hip abduction, abduction. And we take the leg down. So we're going to repeat that, but this time we're going to take the hip with us into the equation. So when we do the heel slides, they're similar, except now we're working against gravity. So we begin by lifting the leg again. And when you come up as high as it's available, now hike the hip up. So bring the hip up towards your shoulder. Lower the hip down and lower the whole leg down. Let's take a buffer breath. And repeating. First, just the leg. So again, differentiating. Once that has gotten all the abduction available, now I hike the hip up and see, now I can get more height on my leg. And then I slide my pelvis down and lower the leg back down into neutral. Buffer breath again. And let's do that one more time. When you're ready, leg lifts. And then the hip joins in. And then slowly taking that one, hip down, leg down. Adduction, when the leg moves towards the center line. And then with as little effort as possible, let's roll over onto the back. Slide the legs out again. And see if you changed your resting muscle tone a little bit on your left hip. What do you think? I think we should do the other side. So I'll spin around so I can see ya. And again, setting up for the clamshell. When I create the classes, I try to put it in order so we're not flopping up and down, around and around. That it sort of makes kind of sense. Of course, when you practice on your own, you can do it in whatever order. So just check heels are lining up with sits bones. And the back of the head and your sacrum is on the same plane. Take the hand to your outer right hip and then lift the knee. And pay attention that you are not moving the pelvis, that imprint on the mat stays exactly as it is. Pure abduction, external rotation. Lifting, you feel the contraction. And then as slowly as is comfortable, releasing down. Buffer breath in between. And again, if it feels safe, closing the eyes and really sensing in. And then letting go. The buffer breath is important to reset the muscle or the motor cortex. If we are doing repetitive movement, it keeps raising the resting muscle tone because it says you're just gonna do it again. So let me make it a little bit easier for you. One more time. Is this side easier or not easier? If this is the easier side, when you practice next time, especially if you find there's a big difference, start on the easy side. Always start on the easy side and let that train the side that's struggling a little bit. Now let's take the leg out long. Mark the spot on your outer hip. So spine stays exactly the same. It's in neutral. Pelvis is the same. Lift the leg without changing any movement above the hip joint. Slowly lowering down. Buffer breath. Lifting. Abduction. And lowering down. Again. Let's begin to take the hip along for the ride. Lifting the leg, and when we reach as far as we can, then we add the hip. So we don't want to take the hip along too fast. We want the leg to do the job first. Hip releases long, leg releases long. Buffer breath when you're ready. Lifting, hiking. And then unhike and lowering. Upper breath. One more time. So we're working with the side seam right now, the trauma reflex. Getting all sides on board. And we're going to roll all the way over onto the abdomen. And support your head in whatever way is comfortable. So we're going to wake up the glutes. So this massive piece of equipment, one of the biggest muscle groups in our body. The glutes are your hip extenders. They have help from the hamstrings, but they are the ones that ought to fire first. So sometimes there's a little problem with the firing order. So I invite you to draw your tailbone towards the heels by contracting the glutes. So you're pulling the glutes together and lengthening tailbone towards the heels. And you can feel how your lower abdomen lifts away from the mat. And we let go. And the pelvis releases back into its anterior or neutral position. So can you feel how that brings the whole pelvic bowl, moves it down? Let's do that again. Draw the glutes together and tailbone towards the heels. There it is. That's what I meant to say. And then slowly release. Slowly. Now it's not uncommon for one glute to fire really well and the other, not so much. So we're going to do this double event one more time, and then we're going to start working separately. And then we'll get a better idea. Slowly release. So hip extension. We worked on the hamstrings last week. You're going to probably feel they're going to want to help you out again tonight. But really, the glutes are on. Pressing the hips down, so that's that sense of drawing the tailbone again to the heels. And then lifting the right leg up. Lift the right leg up. And you're going to feel the upper hamstring firing because they want to help out. And then slowly release. Take a full breath in and out. Pressing the hips down again. And then lift your left leg. Feel the left glute saying hello. Keep the knee straight. Knee straight. And notice how that feels in your hamstring. It's helping out. But sometimes the hamstring sort of forgets that they are supporting staff and not the star. And the glutes themselves checks out a little bit. So bending up the right leg. And then press the hips down again. So now we just took the hamstring kind of sort of out of it and lift the right thigh. Lift the right thigh. And how does this feel different? Let's slowly release the thigh back down. Take a breath in and out. And again, press the hips down. Lift just the right knee. I know I said thigh. I should have said knee. That would have made more sense. Well, the thigh is going to follow, right? Keep your pelvis neutral and slowly release. Are you rocking onto one side? And we're going to do that one more time. Pressing both hips down, feeling the front hip points, and lift the right knee without completely collapsing the front hip into the floor. It's going to go down a little bit, and then it needs to. It's okay, but you want to keep the pelvis kind of even. And then slowly release the knee down. Neutral pelvis. And then slowly release your right foot to the floor for the hamstring release. Letting go. Woo. Bending up the left leg. Oh, we're going to have to balance this one out. And draw both hips to the floor. Lift the knee without twisting and turning. I'll let in the pelvis and slowly take it down. Relax the glute. When you're ready, again, draw the hips down, tailbone towards the heels, and lift the knee again. Glute star player. And slowly, slowly, slowly release. We should just finish it up with one more. When you're ready, hips presses down, and the glute contracts and takes the knee up. And then slowly, 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 slowly releases down. And then we float the left foot towards the floor. And let go. Breathing in and out. So now when we lie on our bellies, then you can feel the breath a little bit better into your back, into your hips maybe. An expansion. And then without a lot of everything, can you find your way onto your back again? And just take the legs out long. And we can't do pelvis without doing the psoas. We're going to bend up the left leg. I'm going to spin around so I can see my right here. Bend up the left leg. And that's just to help keep this low back neutral. Staying at the same place on your sacrum. Sliding your right leg up. And then draw the knee in. So now we're engaging the psoas, the flexor. And then slowly keep your low back a little bit flattened as you take the heel down. You're going to slide it out. So we've done this before, but I'm adding just a little something tonight. as the leg come out, almost straight. You're going to straighten the knee and lift the leg up. So now your foot is 2, maybe 3 inches off the floor. Low back is pressing down. Lengthen out through your right heel and then slowly take the foot down. Remember the quadricep. It's also a hip flexor. And it also straightens the knee, crosses over 2 joints too, just like the hamstring does. Now let go of everything, just let completely go. Take a belly breath. And we're going to repeat this. Slide the heel up. Psoas contracting. Pulling the knee in. Feel how that flattens your back. That means the lumbar is down. So as you lower the heel down to the ground, keep your low back flat. Begin to slide out the leg. And when it is almost straight, straightening it by lifting your foot. Because now we're putting a full load on the psoas and then slowly take the leg down. Keep your back flat, flat, flat. And lowering down. And then let go. And we'll do that one more time. Sliding. Make it easy. Pull the knee in, full hip flexion. This is when you need, when you're going to take off in a quick sprint. Flatten the back. Release the foot down. Sliding it out. When you sense it's all, the knee is almost down, straighten the knee, but lift the foot. And we take it all the way down. Here we get the fibers of the iliacus too. And we let go. Imagine the breath flowing all the way down into your right hip, thigh, knee, foot, all the way down. And then slide your left leg out, pause. And we'll take the right leg up and we are ready to match them up. Make this as easy as you can. Slide the heel up. Enjoy it. That's a fellow Christ term to say, how can you make this really enjoyable? Full knee flexion. Keep the low back down as the foot comes down. Slide the heel out. Straighten the knee and let the foot lift up. And then take the whole leg down. And let go. Breathing into the belly. Remember the diaphragm and the psoas, they intersect together in T12. And we'll repeat. Drawing the knee in. Flat back. Slowly lower. So your abdominis transversus, your corset is getting a little bit of a workout here. Straightening the knee by lifting the foot. And as slowly as you can, lowering down. And then letting go. One more time. That should balance us out. Make it as luxurious and decadent as you can as you slide the leg up. Two words that are not often used with exercise. Because this is not exercise, this is exploration, retraining, whatever you want to call it, rewiring. But you are both the potter and the clay on the wheel. Doing it and receiving the change. Straightening the knee and releasing down. Once down, take a breath. And slowly slide right leg out. So interlace the fingers. We'll draw the legs together. Press the palms towards the sky. And then take the arms overhead out through the heels. And the arms come back as far as is comfortable for your shoulders. So again, no force, no strain. And take the arms up. Switch the interlace. And press the palms towards the sky. Tailbone towards the heels. And consolidate everything towards the midline. And again, we draw the arms up, and now we let everything relax into a little Shavasana. Breathing in and breathing out. The hip and pelvis complex. From a yoga point of view, first and second chakra. The right to be and the right to feel. Mobility. Let's bend up the knees. Take the arms out to the side. And just gently rock the knees from side to side a few times. A little windshield wiper twist. Nothing big and hairy. Not doing washcloths or anything. Just letting there be a little bit of rotation. Didn't do a whole lot of that tonight. But the body sure loves it. And eventually roll all the way over onto your right. And pause. Pause. And then you use your arms and hands and press up. We'll close. And after we close, I will invite you to stand up and walk around. And walking, and notice how your hips move in relation to your shoulders. The foot that steps forward the opposite shoulder travels forward. So think of a model walking down the runway. There, everything is moving when you walk. But first, I'm running over time, so we will close together with Om Shanti, Shanti Shanti Om. Peace in our world, in our community, and in our hearts. Let's take a deep breath in. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you. Namaste. And then